Today, we're joined by Brian Herbert, a seasoned fraud expert with deep experience across not just property and casualty, but also life, annuities, and disability products. Today, we'll explore why SIU should start thinking beyond traditional PNC fraud models and how these other insurance lines can strengthen our industry-wide anti-fraud strategies. I'm Geoff Keah, director with IASIU and your host. So, Brian, I know we've kind of chatted a little bit over email and stuff. I've heard that you have kind of a relatively newer board of directors. What are some of the challenges you faced?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. It's been since the pandemic, the Indiana chapter really stopped meeting as frequently. The challenge, of course, of the pandemic that we all faced and the inability to get together in person created some issues. But I was happy when Angela Polakowski reached out to see if there was a group of us who would, revive the chapter. And very much to my, surprise and happiness, there was a good handful of folks willing to do that. And so it's been a process. We've had to work on getting meetings back on the schedule. We're actually next week having our first in-person meeting. We've done some meetings through Teams that have gone really well, and we're doing an in-person training for 4 hours next week. And it's certainly been a challenge, but at the same time, I was pleased to see what I thought, which was there were still members in Indiana that wanted to have a chapter and be active, and so that's been great. I even saw a couple of them at the IASIU conference in Colorado here, so it's been good to see the chapter start to flourish again.
Awesome. Congratulations on that. Um, I know we had briefly talked about some underrepresentation of non-traditional P&C lines because we're always talking about it's always auto, it's always property. Me in the work comp space is kind of always the stepchild, along with what you're talking about here. What is the biggest misconception that P&C investigators have about like life annuity and disability fraud?
I think it's in my mind, there's kind of a great opportunity for IASU to fulfill the space not only to help train and equip and educate those who are in the PNC space, but also those in life, annuity, disability, as you describe, work comp. One of the things I think is that IASU is positioned uniquely to be able to serve all those areas and increase membership and really that intelligence sharing across lines, because many of our insurers out there, many of those carriers have all those lines, and even some that don't feature those. There's a lot of the same techniques, whether it's interviewing, collecting information and evidence, working with law enforcement and other agencies that are so similar that I think we can really work well together. And then the reality is, as you described, in the work comp space, there are some parallels over in disability. There's some things that we see also with whether that's familial fraud for folks trying to take advantage of their elderly relatives or caregivers in the home trying to take advantage of their clients, that can spread across those platforms. And when I go to things, while my space is in that life annuity and disability area, when I go to conferences and training, there really isn't one that's uniquely for that. And since we do still have an SIU, the IASU, I think, is a great place to really start to incorporate some of the topics and training items in conferences and our events, and even things like this podcast to help get some of those members who maybe focus their efforts in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of begets like the next question is so why should like PNC SIUs pay attention to life annuity disability products, broad trends?
Yeah, I think, we see that overall, a lot of the same things can be present and can happen. And so even though there are some unique differences between those products, we still see our own customers at times who are trying to commit fraud. We see family members attempting to commit fraud. We see some of the same issues with vendors that can be, or doctors that can be in collusion with people to try to create issues and commit fraud. And those span, whether it's injuries related to, an accident in the home or a car accident, or whether those are things that are in the disability and work comp space. Those are all opportunities for folks to commit fraud. And some of those same people will try to perpetrate that. And so I think that's one of those pieces. And then, of course, those carriers out there that are multi-lined, that have life, annuity, or disability as part of their portfolio. Most definitely, while I'm sure they're kind of team based in the way that they process those in the SIU, the reality is I think the more that they can collaborate and understand across the lines, also can pay some dividends for cross training to help each other within the carrier when there's investigations.
Absolutely. So, like, I know we just kind of did talk about that, but have you seen these cases where fraudsters, like, they move between P&C life and annuity products to exploit those gaps?
I certainly think that that definitely exists. And one thing that comes to mind that I think we see is always an ever present issue out there are the closed community or the traveler groups, whatever terms we're going to call today. They oftentimes are committing fraud in that P&C space with staged auto accidents, with renters and homeowners policies. We also see them very prevalent in that life space where they're taking out policies on elderly and potentially infirm, relatives without their knowledge, to hopefully score the big payday when they pass away. And that's a growing fraud problem that we see. And that's a group that really crosses the borders between both of those areas. And so, again, the more we sort of can gather intelligence and share those things together with each other, I think the better off we're helping all areas of SIUs.
Absolutely. So the last question, if we're designing like cross line anti fraud programs, training, or webinars, what would be the top 2, 3 topics that you'd prioritize?
I'm glad you asked that. Training is something that I'm very passionate about. Before I got into law enforcement and in the insurance fraud space, eventually, I got my undergraduate degree in history and education, and I was I was going to be a teacher. And so for me, it's always been training is a huge value, and I believe in lifelong learning. And I think, what's really important to me is keeping the training role specific. So the more as you are working to create training and awareness programs for associates at your carriers, the more that you can relate it to what they do on a daily basis, the forms they're going to see, the calls they're going to listen to, all those pieces, I think really is the keystone for having the best and most effective training. Certainly, it's great to always give people that generalized training that kind of checks the box with regulators. But the reality, hopefully, is that we're using training to change behaviors and to have them recognize red flags and report them to us. So I think that's one of the biggest things to me is making sure that we're doing role-specific training. And then, obviously, take the PII out, change the names, alter things to make them more anonymous. But the more you can share real examples of cases that have come in and been investigated and the outcomes because people identified those red flags and reported them, I think really hammers home too the need for us to be conscious of red flags and reporting them. So those are two of the big things for me.
Nice. Well, Brian, thanks for helping show how integrating non P&C lines strengthens our whole anti fraud ecosystems. Where can people connect with you or learn more about your chapter?
Sure. Yes. My pleasure. And I obviously work at Group 1001. So group1001.com is a great place to find out about our carrier, but also our Indiana chapter. We have Indiana IASIU.org, and you can go there to find out more about our chapter and some of the things we're doing. We also have a page on LinkedIn, and you can find me on LinkedIn to connect as well.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks again for your time and everybody for watching, and we'll catch you guys on the next podcast.